Hello everyone, by the end of this episode we are going to get the halving joint cut and the dovetail halving joint cut. So let's get going. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the practice joint frame. So in the previous video we got the whole thing marked out, or as far as we could. So in this part we're going to focus on the 2 easiest joints within this. So this is going to be the lap joint in the bottom left corner and the dovetail halving joint in the top right corner. Now I have done videos on these in the past on how to cut them, so if you want to know like every little detail about cutting that joint to get it nice and pristine at the end, be sure to watch those, because in this video, for the sake of my previous viewers, I'm going to show you how to cut it out, but I'm not going to dwell on little details in there. So, to the vise. Okay, so we're going to start with the socket on the lap joint. So I've got my crosscut saw here, and I'm going to cut to the knife line about 1 millimeter away from it. Okay, and I'll just do one down the middle as well to weaken that material. And whack that material out. Okay, and then get as close to the gauge line as you can. Then once you can't get any closer, pop the chisel into the gauge line and make your final chop. There's one side done, let's take it out. Go in from the other side. Okay, so I've got as close as I can. Now chisel in the gauge line again. Chop it through, or to at least halfway. Okay, and then you can just simply get a ruler in there, check where it's rocking, and go in with a chisel. And when you're doing this, make sure that you're only taking out the high point. You're not hitting this front edge or this back edge, because that is bang on your gauge line. Okay, let's see where that's sitting. Still got something going on here. So you can keep going with that with a chisel if you want, or you could get yourself a shoulder plane or a router plane. This is a shoulder plane, and I'm going to use that to flatten out the bottom instead of a chisel. Get a little bit more control from this. Okay, that looks to be nice and flat in there, good. So now we just need to chop down into these knife lines. So I cut about 1 millimeter away on here when I was back in the vise. This one I'm a little bit closer, but what I'm going to try and do is halve the material first before going straight into that line. So a nice sharp chisel. Okay, so just cleaning out the corners, make sure there's nothing in there, and that is probably all ready to go. Let's just try and fit this bit in. There you go, so that fits in nice and snug in there. So now let's just cut the corresponding component to fit in there. Okay, so tilting this forward in the vise a little bit, so then I can focus on 2 faces as opposed to all 3 of them. So I'll start with these 2. And again, I'm cutting about 1 millimeter away from the line here. Okay, and now remove that waste. So not quite on the line again. Okay, and now we're just going to establish that line around all the edges with a chisel. So instead of putting it straight into that gauge line, we're going to halve the material first. Just a few small taps, we're just establishing it here. And halve it again. Okay, and now we're about 0.5 millimeter away, so I'm going to go straight into the line. Okay, there we go, so that is all established on the outside here. Okay, so that's both the edges done. Now let's go into the end grain. Okay, now it's established along the top and around the edges, and now we can just get to work removing all of this stuff in the middle. Again, we're just looking to get this nice and flat. If you get a ruler on it, you'll be able to see that if it touches this front corner and the back corner, that means it's all good. So at the moment, it's rocking around here, I think. Okay, I'm happy with how flat that is. So now let's just chisel down to this shoulder line. Right, let's see how they fit together. It's a bit snug. Should go that side. There we go. That is the halving joint cut. So if you want to know how to cut one of these, I'll put a link in the top corner here so you can see more in depth about how I cut this. So next we're going to start the dovetail halving joint. Now, to save you watching exactly what I just did all over again, I'm going to get it to exactly the same stage as I have here because it's pretty much exactly the same joint. We just need to cut a dovetail into here. So I will see you on the other side of that. Right, so now we're ready to cut out the dovetail. The half lap on the back has all been cut out. So I've got my Veritas dovetail saw here. That's not going to quite reach the shoulder line. However, my Japanese saw will reach the shoulder line. So I'm going to use this today. I'm also going to use the Katz-Moses dovetail guide on one of them. This is something I used in a previous video. I also did a tool duel between this and the David Barron guide. It's a great little dovetail guide, so I'm going to use it in here for one side of these tails. So for this one, I'll just do it freehand. I'm just going to nibble away at the top, make sure I'm hitting that line, or on the waist side of it. Okay, and then for the guide, let's just take it out, flip it around, so then I'm still cutting on the same side each time, just makes it a bit easier. So slide it up to my pencil mark, saw's held in place with magnets. And there you go, that is the dovetail shape cut out, so now we can just cut these wings off. Okay, so there I've cut about 1 millimetre off the line, so again take it to 0.5 millimetre and then bang on the line. So I'm just going to follow this line down the front now. There we go, nice crisp joint. Right, so now with that dovetail all cut out, all the shoulders are cleaned up, it's nice and accurate on here, we are going to nest it into the correct components. So when you're doing this, firstly, make sure you're putting it into the correct components. So I've written dovetail on here, and I know that because the face side is out on here and the face side is out on here, that it is going in this way. It's not going in this way because that's obviously wrong. You're going to cut an S-shaped frame, which wouldn't be great. So double check that, triple check that. It's so easy to do. So what I'm going to do is clamp this one in the vise. And now what I'm going to do is I've got this little line here that I marked 50 millimeters in from the edge. That is the line that I'm going to line this shoulder up with. So there we go, that's in place. And then I can just knife around that with a knife. And there you go. Dovetail marked out. Right, so now we're ready to cut out the waist, and I've just squared some lines down either side here to work to later on. So I'm not cutting directly to the line yet, just 1 millimetre away. And then same as before, get it upright and smack out the waist. Just be wary here because obviously you are chiseling into a wedge-shaped cavity, so you don't want to start damaging the walls here. Try and keep that chisel central as you get further down. Okay, and then exactly the same before, get all of this rubbish out the middle. I'm just going to check it with a ruler, see if we've got any humps in there, which we have. Okay, that's all good, so now let's just chisel down these walls. Okay, right, let's try a test fit. Right, so there's our assembled halving joint, so we'll move that out of the way. The dovetail one, let's see how this fits. Oh, I think we're going to need a hammer on that. Lovely. Okay, I think that's enough mess for one day. So, halving joint done, dovetail halving joint done. Like I say, I skimmed over them quite a lot in this video, so if you wanted to see either of those in more depth, there is links in the description for those, so be sure to have a look at that. In the next episode, we're going to be doing the bridle joint and the through mortise and tenon joint. So that should be a fun one. See you then.